Well, hello and welcome again to our reading of the Epistle to the Hebrews, and we're up to chapter 3. So in the earlier chapters, the emphasis has been on comparing Jesus with the angels and showing how much superior he is to the angels. In this section, we now move to comparing Jesus with Moses. And Jesus is portrayed as the son, whereas Moses is the servant. So we begin by Hothen Adelphoi Hagioi, Klesios ep uraniu metokoi, katanoesiti ton apostolon kai archihirea rea tes homologias hemoniesun, piston onta to poiesanti auton hos kai mouses, and in brackets hollow to oiko autu. The hothen we have seen before, it's just hot plus this old ending then, this old ablative ending. It's quite common in earlier Greek. It means from there, so as a result of this, or from whence. Adelphoi hagioi, holy brethren, holy brothers. We have had met okos before, that's that from meta plus that echo. Meteko is to share in, and metokoi are those who share. So you who share the heavenly klesios calling. This is from klesis, third declension, feminine abstract noun, obviously formed from kaleo. So as a result of which, holy brethren, sharers of the heavenly calling. And then we get an imperative, katanoesiti, often translated just to consider or observe. It can have, I like to translate it as to turn your mind to try and get the noio root in here. So turn your mind to the apostolon, not the apostle here, but the one who is sent, is a better translation in this context. And the archihirea, this is from archihierus. It's third declension noun in eus, and this is just the accusative here. And the chief priest of our confession, homologia, Ieson, Jesus. Piston onta to poiesanti auton. So he being faithful to, now this is not made here but appointed, this use of poieo here, probably in the sense of to appoint rather than to make. So the one being faithful to the one having appointed him, as also Moses, understand, was, piston, was faithful in all of his house. We're going to get so pleonis gar, hutos doxes paramousein ex iotai, kath hoson pleon atimein ekain tu autu hoc kataskuasas auton. So for hutos, that one, that is referring to Jesus. Now the main verb here is axiotai. This is from axioo. This is a perfect passive. Because it begins with an alpha, we get an augment rather than a reduplication. It's an o verb, so that lengthens to omega, and then we're getting our passive ending tie here. So for that man has been deemed worthy, pleonos doxes, of more glory, paramouses, compared with Moses. Literally beside Moses, we'd have to translate compared with Moses. For he has been deemed worthy of more glory, pleonos genitive going with doxes, from pleon, comparative there, of more glory than that beside Moses, or perhaps compared with Moses, kath hoson, just as. Now we get here a metaphor from the house and the builder of the house. So just as hoc kataskuasas, this is an aorist participle from kataskuasdo, and that's a verb with pretty vague meaning. It means to prepare or to get things ready, to arrange your things. It's a fairly vague word he's used here. It must have the sense of to build, although the author could have chosen much more specific words here. So just as the one having built it out on, that is, understand the house, has pleiona, that's from the same pleion again, this is the accusative, has greater honour, now we get a genitive of comparison, than the house itself. So just as the one having built the house has greater honour than the house itself. Pascha oikos kataskuasdatai hupotinos hodepanta kataskuases theos. For each house, now we get a passive here, present passive from kataskuasdo again, is built hupotinos by someone. But hoc kataskuasas, the one having built, aorist participle again, panta all things, understand, is theos, is God. Kai moouses men pistos in holo to oiko artu hos therapon, es marturion ton lelethes somenon, Christos de hos huios epiton oikon autu. There's a nicely structured two verses here. We've got a men, and we've got a nice balancing de. So Moses on the one hand, Christ on the other. The other linkage between them is hos therapon and hos huios. So nicely constructed sentence here. So, and Moses on the one hand, if you want to translate that, understand, was faithful in all of his house, hos therapon, as a servant, for the testimony, so or perhaps resulting in the testimony or for the testimony, so he was faithful in respect of the testimony of the things being about to be said. So here we have a future passive participle from lalio. So we get normally thesomai, and this is now the participle. So of the things being about to be said. But the Messiah, understand, is pistos, is faithful, hos huios, as a son, upon his house. So just putting all that together. So Moses was faithful in his whole house as a servant with regard to the testimony of the things being about to be said, but the Messiah, understand, is faithful over his house, hos huios, as a son. Who oikos esmen hemes. And now we get this, you see there's variant readings here because it's slightly tricky. It's of which house we are. So we would say we are his house. It's almost parenthetical here. Aeon, and then brackets, per tan paresian kai to kalkema tes elpidos kataskomen. If, now the main verb here is kataskomen, if we hold fast to the paresia. Now paresia is boldness or confidence, and the kalkema and the boast of hope. Now, continues on now, looking back to Moses and looking back to the Israelites in the desert with Moses, and we get some quotations here. The quotation here is essentially from Psalm 95, 7 to 11, in one of the Septuagintal versions, but again it's been adapted, so there's various adaptations here. Diokathos lege to pneuma to hagion. Wherefore, this is dia plus hot, on account of which, just as the Holy Spirit says, notice we've got articles this time, and we get the quotation, Semeron ian tes phones artua ku eseti me sklerunetitas cardias humon hos in to parapikrasmo kataten hemeran to perasmu in to eremo hu eperasan hoi pateres humon ek en dokimasia kai edon ta ergamu tesura conta ete. So, Semeron, today, if you hear, that's taking the genitive of the voice, normally in classical Greek it's a genitive, akuo takes a genitive of person but accusative of the thing heard. Here we've got a genitive, this quotation from the Septuagint. So today, if you hear his voice, may plus the subjunctive here, do not harden, from sklei runo. So we get a subjunctive for imperative. So may you not harden your hearts, plural, as in to parapikrasmo. Now, pikros is bitter. The parapikrasmos is something which leads to bitterness and hence provocation, it's normally translated. It's a fairly rare word. So in the provocation, and it's referring explicitly, I think, to the Israelites tempting God in the desert as they're being led by Moses. And that's made more explicit here because he says, according to the day of testing in the desert, so at the day of testing in the desert, who, where, and that's a common usage of who, it's at the place, understand where. So where your fathers, now we get peirasan, this is from peirao, the alpha, although it's an alpha contract, it doesn't lengthen, this is an aorist here, where your fathers tempted en dokimasia, well, in a testing. So we would say perhaps by a test. You could say where your fathers put me, that is God, to the test. Kai Adon, and I saw, sorry, they saw, I should say, they saw my works for 40 years. Dia pros oak thisa te genea taute kai epon ae planotai te cardia autoi de uk egnosan tas hodus mu hos omasa ente orge mu a es elusontai estan kata pausin mu. Wherefore, now this is another verb here, it's from pros okthisdo. You can probably come across that root ekthros, or there is a root okthos, and meaning to anger or to make annoyed. This is a very rare verb. In fact, I think it's only used in the Septuagint, and then it's quoted here in the New Testament. There are common non-compounded verbs from this root, but this one I think is extremely rare. It means to be angry, so it's pros ochthisdo. So to be angry, the Hebrew word that it translates literally means to loathe, and the pros is gives the direction of which the loathing occurs. So for which reason I felt loathing towards that or this generation, if you want to over-translate it with the pros. So for which reason I loathed or I hated or I was angry with perhaps this generation. and I said, continually, now this is from planoo, to wander, and it's in the middle. Continually they wander around, perhaps they vacillate, might be a good word there. They continually vacillate in their heart, and but they do not, this is from Gnosko, do not know or perhaps understand my ways. Hos, thus, or perhaps as, this is from omnumi, to swear. Thus I swore in my anger. Now this is a Semitic idiom here. It means that they will never enter into my rest. It's a bit like our English expression, I'll be damned if he does this, i.e. he will never do it. But we don't quite get that in the Greek. It doesn't mean if they will enter. So it's after this verb of, so thus I swore in my anger, that they will not enter. Now there's no negative here, but it's a Semitic idiom, a bit like ours. I said, I'll be damned if they do this. And then we get the future here from Ace Urkamai. So I swore in my anger that they will never, they will not enter into my katapausin, into my rest. Blepete adelphoi me potiestai en tinihumon cardia ponera apistias ento apostenai tu theou zontos. Alla para kalete hiautus kat hekastein hemeran. Aquis tu tosemeron kaletai. I'll have to continue to the next page. Hina me skle runthe tis ex humon aparte tes hamatias. And I'll just stop there. So, behold, brethren, or rather, so look, brethren, lest ever there may be, or there will be, I should say, among any of you, cardia ponera, an evil heart, or a heart evil and then with disbelief. We're getting a genitive here, I think, defining this, what we mean by the evil heart. So a heart evil with disbelief. Now, ento plus the infinitive normally means while, but the en and ace are often being used interchangeably in your New Testament Greek. Ace is originally ents anyway, but by the time you get to the New Testament, ace and en are often interchanged, which is why you get I believe into or I believe in. They're just interchangeable almost, and I think this has that purpose sense, resulting in apostenai, so resulting in revolt. We get a word apostasy from this, of course, resulting in revolt from a living God, or we would say the living God. But encourage one another, hekastein hemeran, according to each day. So encourage one another each day. Acris hu, this normally means until. You've got to supply chronu or something here, until the time when. But probably here it means as long as. This is a funny expression here. Literally, as long as it is called tot semeron, today. The sense is that while there is still time. So encourage one another daily while it is still called today, that is, while there is still time. Hina me, in order that not, so lest, sklerunthe is aorist passive from skleruno, and tis, lest any from among you might be hardened, it's passive, by deceit, dative here, of sin. Now, the editor very kindly has put some dashes here because the sense breaks off. Verse 15 is going to pick up where this finishes, but we've got this verse 14 in between that breaks up the sense of it. So, metokoi ga tu Christu gegonamen, ean per tenaken tes hypostasios mequitelus bebaion kataskomen. Let's do that there. So, for we have become, this is from ginomai, this is the perfect form here, slightly odd form, but that's the perfect form from ginomai. For we have become metokoi, we've had that word before, sharers with Christ, as we sharers of the Messiah. Now, ean per, if the pair emphasizes it, so if indeed, kataskomen from kateko, we hold firm, we hold, now bebaion is firm or secure, tain arcane, and it's going with arcane, so we hold a secure beginning, literally. What we would say in English, we hold firm the beginning of the hypostasios. Now, this is often here translated as firmness or resolution, some translated ground of hope. This again is one of those funny words, the hypostasis. It's used in Christian theology, later Christian theology, to identify the union between Jesus and God, between human and the divine. You can look up, for example, the hypostatic union. However, the commentators insist that it here just means something like firmness or resolution or ground of hope. Mekritelus, this is genitive here, until the end. Now, as I mentioned, then this is broken off from the main sense of this. So we get en to legesthai. And again, I think it's en for ace, so resulting in it being said. I think the translators just say it is said, but it's much more, it is actually more than that. And it's picking up this sclare runthe that we had in the earlier verse here, which gets picked up in the quotation. So just to put that together a little bit, in order that, so lest none of you be hardened by the deceit of sin, resulting in it being said. And we get the bit in the middle, which is simply for we have become sharers with the Messiah, if we hold a secure beginning of the, well, whatever that is, the resolution through to the end. So resulting in it being said, this is a passive participle here. And then he just re-quotes again the earlier bit, for if today you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the provocation. This is what we had before. And just to finish off the last few verses here, Tineska accusantes para epikranon. Now the writer here picks up the adjective parapikrasmos, or rather the noun I should say, the provocation, and takes the corresponding verb. Parapikrino is the verb. Pikros is to be bitter. And we get this series of rhetorical questions here. For who are the ones who have heard? So who of the ones having heard caused the acted in provocation? And then we get the answer. We get another question here. It was surely not all those having come out from Egypt, Diomosias, well, through the actions of Moses. So it wasn't everybody who did it. Tissi de pros oakthisen tesseraconta ete. And for whom, this is that verb we had before, this pros okthisdo, to be angry. So with whom was he angry? for 40 years. Now, Uki expecting the answer yes. This is a aorist dative participle, dative plural participle. So was it not with the ones who sinned? Slightly odd form here. It's from hamatano. The root is hermaton, and then we've got the participle ending dative plural and a linking vowel here. So was it not with the ones who sinned, of whom takola, this means literally the limbs in classical Greek, but here it means the corpses. So whose corpses episen from Pipto fell in the desert, and for against whom did he swear that they would not be about to enter into his rest? Was it not, except for the ones who were disobedient? So whom did he swear that they would not enter into his rest? Was it not, except for the disobedient? So was it not for the disobedient? So they're the ones that he was swearing against. Kai blepomen, hoti uk e dunathasen eis elthain diapestian. And we see that they were not able. This is the, well, it's a past tense from dunamai. It looks like an aorist passive. Dunamai, and this is a double augment here. It's dunamai, and they've put an eta in front for the augment. It's a very strange form. So we see that they were not able to enter in on account of their faithlessness. And that's the end of chapter 3.